1965. Fashion is a form of ugliness so intolerable we have to alter it every 6 months. Journalism is unreadable. Literature is not read. In the old days they had the rack. Now we have the press. But there are only two tragedies in life. One is not getting what one wants. The other is getting it. But don't mistake me for a pessimist. A true pessimist hears opportunity knocking and complains about the noise. I'm a man of wit, style and prestige. In other words, I'm shockingly in debt, and yet I'm without despair. I cheat my friends fair and square, but the man who can dominate a London dinner party can dominate the world. The man who can tolerate a woman's faults and failings finds it easier to leave without a moment's hesitation. For a man can survive anything but death and a good reputation. I'm beginning to feel that I may die beyond my means, but then I've always believed that anyone who lives within his means suffers from a lack of imagination. I'm a man with no enemies at all. That is why I'm disliked by my friends. I can't say they care for me, but girls I know disagree. A woman starts by slowing down a man's advance, then ends by blocking his retreat, and now he's accountable. The odds insurmountable. But the man who can dominate a London dinner party can dominate the world. The man who is smart enough to live life just for pleasure never listens to his friends when they fill his head with reason. For a man knows that even the best of advice is never in season. There's another Georgie girl on another Ruby Tuesday, and it makes me feel so glad all over. There's a kind of hush in the neighborhood, and now I think I'm into something good. For the man who can dominate a London dinner party dominate the world. I'm a man who can make the most from doing so very little, and with a woman I make sure that I'm miles and miles above her. For a man can be happy with any woman as long as he does not love her. Did you hear the record I was just playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that. For your sake. Do you have the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I saw from your account book that on Thursday night 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed?
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's flat the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in a married household the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens. Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once, sir. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I'm not sure that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. I never think of it myself.
That'll do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them?
Mr. Earnest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Earnest? What brings you up to Carnaby Street?
Oh, pleasure. What should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, One amuses other people. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Who is coming to tea?
Merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How delightful.
I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
There's no romance in proposing, no comfort in success. All your hopes and joys will end as soon as she says yes. If affection is forthcoming, and it's you her heart adores, well, you may take her heart for pleasure, just don't give her yours.
Though I enjoy your savoir-faire and poise, you bore me when you stand there making noise. I merely wish to live the life a gentleman enjoys.
Then pay attention, my dear fellow. There is no romance, oh sir, when you know, sir, you're her beau, sir. There is no suspense, but if it's awkward, frightful, it's delightful when it makes no sense. So just be sure you always stink of gin.
Ah! She'll grow to loathe me.
Then the sparks begin.
And if she breaks my heart,
then you just take it on the chin. There's no finer thing of beauty. There is no romance, oh sir, when you know, sir, she's gone, oh sir. Love will peter out, but if she's distant, stalling, it's enthralling. Love is calling, passion growing strong, but only when it all goes wrong.
Ah, interesting notion, but it will never do for me.
Well, it doesn't matter. I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my second cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Is this your cigarette case?
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you'd let me know.
However, now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And you've no right to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should and shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I don't propose to discuss modern culture.
This cigarette case is a present from someone by the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name. From little Cecily, with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack.
Well, if you must know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. And a charming old lady she is too. Just give it back to me, Algie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she's your aunt? From little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. Surely that is a matter that an aunt may decide for herself. Now, for heaven's sake.
But why does your aunt call you her uncle? From little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out.
My dear fellow, there's nothing to it. My adoptive father made me guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew, who lives at my place in the country. She addresses me as her uncle, out of motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate.
Yes, but that doesn't explain why she calls you Uncle Jack. You've always told me your name was Earnest. It's on your card.
It isn't Earnest. It's Jack. I'm Earnest in the city, I'm Jack at my estate. Jack consorts with lords, while Ernest's always running late. He seems to fancy trouble. I help him when I can. Little brother Earnest, a most unfortunate young man.
I'm fascinated. Tell me more.
That's just a sample of my code and greed.
Rather like this code.
A change of name is nice when I'm in need.
What?
It's none of your concern who I've intended to mislead.
True.
But in case there's some confusion, there is no Earnest. Oh, sir.
That is low, sir. Even so, sir, I am quite impressed. There is no Earnest. Thrilling, so fulfilling. Yes, I should have guessed. I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist?
In order to be able to go to the country whenever I choose, I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, who often needs my assistance. I always knew you had some bad in you.
Me?
But now I find I like the cad in you. It's comforting to know that what you say is really true. So enchanting, my dear fellow. There is no Earnest. Shocking. Fate is knocking. Girls are flocking. We're about to burst. It's like we're brothers. Oh, sir, now we know, sir, we're both low, sir, but so finely bred, and we still got birds to bed. Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta. Now, if I can get Aunt Augusta out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at the Savoy?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Gwendolen, you're looking smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I am sorry if we are a little late, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. Won't you come sit here, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Algernon, tonight I am going to sit you next to Mary Farquhar.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not. It would put my tables completely out of order. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs.
It is a great bore, and a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I have just had a call to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
But I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd.
I'll speak to him, Aunt Augusta, and I think I can promise you he will be all right by your reception on Saturday. I'll run over the music programme I've drawn out for you, if you will kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. That is very thoughtful of you. Gwendolen, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Please don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
Oh, I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I would like to take advantage of your mother's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mama has a way of coming back suddenly into a room.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I've ever met. Since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of that fact. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent. We live, as I hope you know, in an age of ideals and expensive magazines. A modern world is ours to rightly claim. And my ideal has been to find the perfect man to match the perfect name. Earnest, I've never heard a sound so beautiful. There's very little point to any other name. Earnest, even saying it aloud arouses joy in just the right amount of shame. Earnest, it lands so gently on the tongue, the impropriety of romance has begun.
But
Earnest, the very word demands respect, induces confidence and nervousness. I'm all afright.
it's just...
Earnest, the very nature of its sound becomes my most important trivial delight.
To clarify...
Like music, I may not always hear the beat, but I am thankful that my taste is so elite.
Darling.
I have always loved your name. It's like a sonnet to my heart. It humbles me most happily, and it remains the greatest name of names. The greatest name of names.
You really love me, Gwendolyn.
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is. But I must say, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for example, a charming name.
Jack? There's very little thrill in Jack, very little thrill, very little music, very little mirth in Jack. Not a lot of wit, I pity any girl who's been put upon, besides which Jack is almost John. There's very little hope in Jack, very little charm, very little substance. I don't hear a song in Jack. There isn't any heart, there isn't any grace, very little thrill. You might as well be Dick, or Bill, or Jude, or Gus, or Ted, or Newt. There is only one name that is worth my heart's pursuit. Ernest, the moment Algernon first spoke of you, I had a sense that destiny was at my door. Ernest, just a random set of letters, but arranged in such a way that I adore. My Ernest, how ordinary you appear, but when I hear your name, I long to have you near.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. We must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and, well, you've led me to believe that you're not absolutely indifferent to me.
Oh, I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject hasn't even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you from any possible disappointment, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn!
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me? Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. Oh, how long you have been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one, I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Earnest, what wonderful blue eyes you have. I hope you always look at me like that, my dear. Earnest, if there is anything to fear, it's my mother who may suddenly appear. But Earnest, we can finally have our day. There's no one else I'd rather lead my heart astray.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me. You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter she could be allowed to arrange for herself.
Mamma, times have changed.
Not in our family.
Not everybody agrees with your notions of the world.
To disagree with the British public is one of the first requisites of sanity. And now, Mr. Worthing, I have a few questions to put to you. While I am making these inquiries, Gwendolen, you will wait for me in the car.
Mamma.
In the car, Gwendolen. You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you, you are not on my list of eligible young men. However, I am quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. What is your income?
Oh, about 300,000 a year, I should think.
That is satisfactory.
I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres.
You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolen could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square.
What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none.
Nor should you. It would be very unattractive. Now, to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth.
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing. because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
And where did the charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket for this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag? What do you mean, a handbag?
An ordinary handbag with handles on the side.
Good God, a handbag! You didn't just say a handbag!
Yes, he really just said a handbag. Weren't you paying attention?
I see. Well, then, where did this person find you in an ordinary handbag with handles on the side?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station, precisely the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial, Mr. Worthing. I would strongly advise you to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would ever dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel.
I was rather hoping you would. Yes.
I'd be neglectful in my duties if I granted my consent. Her happiness comes first. We do not care if she's content. My daughter will not marry you, that hardly need be said. Your behavior reminds me of the worst excesses of the French Revolution, and we all know where that led. A contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life, a contempt for the ordinary failings of man and wife. To be born into a parcel cannot be excused. Gwendolen is dainty, and I would be more lenient if I could. But it's all for Gwendolen's good, all for Gwendolen's good, all for Gwendolen's good.
I don't think Gwendolen would agree with you, Lady Bracknell.
That is because she is a woman. You are a man. Try not to lose sight of your only redeemable attribute, Mr. Worthing. And now I see more clearly why you were never on our list. Your story is alarming, for your plot comes with a twist. I'm determined to expose you for the fraud you really are. A man whose lineage can be traced to a handbag in a railway car. A contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life. A contempt for the ordinary promises of man and wife. Have you no understanding for the petty things you should? You may think I'm reprimanding, but I promise you that everything I do is all for Gwendolen's good, 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 all for Gwendolen's good.
Some cause happiness wherever they go. Some, whenever they go.
You look pale as a ghost. But didn't it go off all right, old boy?
Gwendolen's mother is perfectly unbearable. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolen ending up like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algie?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his.
Clever boy.
By the way, have you told Gwendolen the truth about your being Earnest in the city and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have on the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
What about your fictional brother? How long do you think you can keep the truth from your little ward?
Before the end of the week, I shall get rid of him. Cecily's a little too much interested in Ernest. 'Tis rather a bore. I'll say he died in Paris of a severe chill.
I thought you just said Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that's all right. Cecily's not a silly, romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to meet this Cecily.
I will take very good care that you never do. She is excessively pretty, and she is only just 20.
Have you told Gwendolen you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 20?
One does not blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolen are certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear boy, if we want to get a good table at the Savoy, we really must go and dress. Do you know it's nearly 7?
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolen, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolen, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Turn around, Algy.
My own darling.
Ernest, Maman says we will never be married. I fear she is quite serious. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dearest Gwendolen.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mama with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deepest fibers of my nature. Your town address I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Walton, Hertfordshire.
It may be necessary to do something desperate, but of course will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your car, my own darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out lane.
Yes, sir.
Lane, I sometimes feel that God, in creating man, somewhat overestimated his abilities. Do you agree?
I wouldn't know, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going bunburying. Tomorrow could be a very fine day, in its own way, a very fine day, I say. Tomorrow could bring a pretty girl's face in a new place, a very nice change of pace. In the country, birds are singing, bees are in their hives. Thistles grow whilst silly people complicate their lives. Tomorrow could be a fanciful night, there's a girl I might distress or delight. Tomorrow could bring a perfect sky, I'm intrigued by Cecily. You don't know what you mean to me, Cecily, though I don't know you yet. Will I like your eyes? Could you be my demise? Though Cecily, we've never met. Cecily, if I acted honestly, Cecily, would I still have your esteem? I pride in myself that I have always lived a lie. Morality is so extreme. A man wants to be a woman's first romance, while a woman wants to be be a man's very last chance. I don't believe in love at first sight, though it might take place under very poor light. In the country, rules are broken, one forgets his wits. But if things go well, then one does more than one admits. Tomorrow could be a very fine day that could come with a price I'd rather not pay. Tomorrow could bring the perfect sky. I'm intrigued by Cecily. I wonder if we're meant to be. Cecily, when finally we meet, will I feel my heart soar, or will you be born? Cecily, love's bittersweet.
Listening to that contraption now, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language, and I know perfectly well that I look quite unattractive after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious.
I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that's why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish dear Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism.
You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means. To your work, child. Enough of these unconvincing pronouncements.
Was your novel ever published, Miss Prism?
I find these kinds of speculations profitless, my dear.
Oh, but I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Yes, indeed.
And Cecily, I hope you are not being inattentive in your studies.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I mean that metaphorically. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not arrived from London yet?
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as he is that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I could not agree with you more, Doctor.
Miss Prism, might we go for a stroll? We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational.
I know I should pay attention to chemistry, language, and art. But when it comes to study, there's too much stress placed on being smart. I don't care about history books, I only care about comedy looks. I don't go for junk nouns no more. I don't care about yesterday's news, please just give me some rhythm and blues. And get off my cloud, I'm not the girl next door. No more science, no more grammar, play that mercy me. I don't care about X's and O's, only care about economy clothes. Leave my boots and make me ring those nose. No more Shakespeare, no Jane Austen, give me April's Rose. All I want is more excitement, some bad behavior might be my savior. Miss Prism thinks I'm wholesome, Miss Prism thinks I'm pure. She doesn't really see me, and I will not alert her, but she doesn't practically won't hurt her. I don't care about Oliver Twist. Mansfield Park doesn't really exist. Give me the truth, or baby, you love me, dude. 'Cause no one sees my miserable side. Small town girl needs a ticket to ride. Your mother should know I gave you something new. All I want is one distraction. Music sets me free. So turn the record up until my ears won't stop ringing. Lulu is singing, London is swinging, but just beware. The town's gonna rattle and roll when I get there.
Miss,
Hello, Merriman.
Mr. Earnest Worthing has just arrived from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in London?
Yes, miss. He seemed very disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you'd better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
And you are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked at all, Cecily. You mustn't think I'm wicked.
Well, if you're not, then you've certainly been deceiving us in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you've not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Ah, of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, now you mention it, I have been very bad in my own small way.
Oh, I don't think you should be so proud of that. Though I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
It's much more pleasant being here with you.
I can't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That's a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning.
Well, I think you'd better wait until Uncle Jack arrives, don't you?
I agree completely.
Good. Then it's settled.
I know I've just met you, Cecily, and yet you see what a wretch I've become.
I certainly do.
And though I'm unworthy, if you could just tempt me, I'm sure that I would succumb.
I'm afraid I've no time.
Yes, I might have the face of an angel, but I'm far more repugnant inside.
Pencil something enough to
For in spite of my eyes, so stunning and blue,
Yes, they are. Quite.
for in spite of my charm, there's something alarmingly wrong with me too. In spite of my handsome demeanor, not even Nero could bear me. Fear only you can repair me.
Oh, that is quite tempting, knowing you're so ghastly. I have more German to read.
Surely the Germans can wait.
And though I despise learning, I have a strict motto: don't trust a man dressed in tweed.
I admit that on occasion I'm a little overdressed, but I make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Though the truth is, I find you disturbing.
Hopefully.
It's exciting to be so distant, but in spite of the
Dear Cecily,
thrill of having you near,
I can be closer still.
please know that my love for nefarious creatures is almost sincere, in spite of your handsome demeanor. I'd be obliged to ensnare you, but I don't have the time to repair you.
Well, would you mind my repairing myself this afternoon?
That's rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
You are like a pink rose, Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
I know I've just met you, Cecily, and yet you capture my vagabond heart. And the truth is, although I'm a scoundrel, I could do even worse things for you.
That is most generous.
For in spite of my eyes,
Offensive.
so shockingly
In spite
blue,
of what's left of your morals.
in spite of my charm, there's something alarmingly wrong with me too. In spite of it all, in spite of how much I am tempted, the urge is preempted. My only defense is I still may come to my senses.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. Do you not realize that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation?
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've been told not even to her.
But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools?
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing!
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you until Monday afternoon.
I've returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance?
Still leading his life of pleasure?
Dead.
Your brother Earnest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you have always been the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. You were with him in the end?
No. He died abroad. In Paris, in fact. I had a call from the manager of the Grand Hotel last night. A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragedy on Sunday.
Ah, that reminds me. You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble? I suppose you know how to christen, all right. I mean, of course you are continually christening, aren't you?
Is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing?
But it isn't for any child, dear doctor. No, the fact is, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have already been christened.
I don't remember anything about it. Do you think I'm a little too old now?
Not at all. At what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Oh, I might trot round about 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly. And now I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you to not be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack, I am so pleased to see you back. I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
Wah, what nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he's still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room? Absurd. Oh, good heavens.
Brother John, I've come down from town to tell you that I am very sorry for the trouble I've given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think his coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone.
I must say I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it's the first time I've ever come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never. Never, never.
Well, it is the last time I will ever do it.
It is pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over. I feel very happy.
Brother Jack, you're looking well. I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week.
How dare you speak to me, you rogue and heel?
Brother, show me the tenderness you truly feel.
Your conduct is an outrage and your hair less than ideal.
And what of you? In mourning for a man whom you detest, who isn't real yet stays here as your guest.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you to
It's
town.
my duty as a gentleman to always be well dressed. But I'll forgive your cruel intentions, because we're brothers.
Closer,
Never closer.
you should go, sir. Push me, come to shove.
You're my brother.
Scandal.
Can you handle some brotherly love?
I have no brother, as I'm sure you knew. Nor is it likely I am likely to. But if ever I should have one, I'd insist he not be you.
Hurtful.
But in case there's some confusion, we are not brothers.
Oh, sir,
Don't get closer.
when I go, sir,
You will not be missed.
we are brothers.
Never.
But however,
You do not
exasperation. This is a pointless conversation. Thank heavens you're not a relation. So let's just say hello, goodbye, with no reply. Now I demand a small apology. Brother, though true we share no genealogy, we share the name of Earnest, who was dead till 3:30. But we'll always have each other, because we're brothers, closer, never closer. You, sir, oh, sir, perfectly disturbed. We are not brothers, never. Aren't you clever? But however, surely you'll agree, brother, you are stuck with me. When the gods want to punish us, they answer our prayers. How ideal, I'm devoid of devotion. And it's true, I'm not young enough to know all there is, but in time, you will find we've declined. We are all in the gutter. We are all in the gutter. We are all in the gutter. Some of us are looking at the stars. I'm afraid I'm impervious to guilt or to blame, and I hope my audacity helps others. For it's true, I'm not schooled enough to be uninformed, but in time we will try to imply. We are all in the gutter. We are all in the gutter. We are all in the gutter. And some of us are looking at the stars. I'm a man of perfection. I'm a man of my time. But on further reflection, it appears we are all in the gutter. 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 Some of us are looking at the stars. It's absurd to divide people into good and bad. People are either charming or tedious.
Always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much.
I like persons better than principles, and I like persons with no principles best of all.
Anybody can sympathise with the sufferings of a friend, but it requires a very fine nature to sympathise with a friend's success.
I love to talk about nothing. It's the only subject I know anything about.
We have really everything in common with America nowadays, except, of course, language.
There is nothing in the world like the devotion of a married woman. It is a thing no married man knows anything about.
I can resist anything except temptation.
My own business always bores me to death. I much prefer other people's.
Are you speaking of me?
Oh, no, I was not.
There is only one thing in life worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.
I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone and ordered a car for me.
Oh, is he going to take you on a nice drive?
He's going to send me away.
Oh, then we must part.
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. Even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The driver's at the door, sir.
He can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope I won't offend Cecily if I state quite openly and frankly that you're absolutely perfect. I can't find a flaw. You're absolutely lovely. My heart is in awe. And every little thing you do has eloquence and flair. You're absolutely perfect, but is perfection fair?
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you'll allow me, I'll copy your confession into my diary.
You're absolutely precious, with talent and verve.
Please, go on.
You absolutely slay me with each line and curve.
Interesting.
I only want to know that you could feel the things I feel.
Things I feel.
You're absolutely perfect, indecently ideal.
Oh, don't stop. I've reached indecently ideal. I'm quite ready for more.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh, no. It's simply a young girl's account of her thoughts and impressions, her secret assessments. It's simply a young girl's account of her petty amusements, a private creation, and ultimately meant for publication.
You're absolutely perfect. My heart is aglow.
It will eventually appear in the bin.
Positively stunning. The whole world should know.
You'll purchase a copy.
I only want to hear that you could love me in return.
In return.
You're absolutely perfect. I love you quite madly. Don't let this go badly, and don't let it end sadly. Cecily, you don't know what you mean to me.
I've known for quite some time.
Cecily,
Yes, Ernest.
now that finally we meet,
Let us be discreet.
you shall be my demise.
We hope to
I do so like a surprise. Oh, Cecily, love's bitter sweet.
Your car is waiting, sir.
Have the driver come round next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Jack. I don't care for anybody in the whole world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Oh, you silly boy! What? Of course! We have been engaged for the last 3 months!
For the last 3 months.
Yes, it'll be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how exactly did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you have been the chief topic of conversation. And of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive, and I dare say it was silly of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was the engagement actually settled?
Last February. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you on this very spot. Oh, and the next day I bought this little box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my own sweet Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. The 3 you wrote me after I'd broken off the engagement were so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Oh, of course it was! On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off the engagement with Earnest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
When did you take me back?
Oh, I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally. Does it?
Yes, darling, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You're absolutely perfect, with no moral cause.
Do you really think so?
You've stunning bad behavior. I've come to adore.
Thank you, Cecily.
You're decadent and shallow, with no decency or grace.
Then you'll marry me.
Miss Prism would forbid it. I can't wait to see her face.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily.
Oh, I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there's the question of your name.
Yes, of
You mustn't laugh at me, but it's always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Earnest.
absolutely
Who
done
sounds so
for.
beautiful. There's
She'll see
no
through my lies.
Earnest.
Absolutely
Saying
shattered.
love arouses joy and just the right amount
This
of
is my demise.
Earnest.
She'll hate me so. If I change my name, will she know? Cecily, I believe I see Dr. Chasuble. I suppose he's experienced in the practice of all the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes. He's a most learned man. He's never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see him at once on a most important christening. I mean, on most important business.
Oh,
I won't be away more than half an hour.
what an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal in my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing. On very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Please ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack and some of his philanthropic work in London.
Miss Fairfax.
Please, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other such a comparatively short time. Please sit down.
May I call you Cecily?
With pleasure,
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
if you wish.
Then that is all quite settled then, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You've heard of him, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Cecily, do you mind if I look at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I am very fond of being looked at.
You're here on a short visit, I hope?
Oh, no. I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor, in fact, any relations.
Indeed.
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh, it's strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. I'm not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. But no matter. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honour. Disloyalty would be as impossible for him as deception.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It's his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time.
That accounts for it. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
His what?
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Daily Telegraph on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It's certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. If you care to verify the incident, please do so.
Well, this is most extraordinary.
Our friendship is over.
You've lost my affection.
A trust has been broken.
I raise an objection.
I don't think I like you.
On further reflection, Ernest wants me for his own. You are not worthy.
Yet we're getting married.
He has not consented. I know that.
A lie you've invented. My only relief is you might be demented. Ernest wants me for his own. I wish that you were old.
Quite candid. I wish that you were plain and a little vulgar.
But if the truth be told, I'm quite bewildered. You were like a sister. Now I'm even for you, so holier than thou. You're like a stranger now. It must be entrapment.
Might be a liar.
He's recently seen her.
Did know him prior.
She have a defect. Mama will inquire. Ernest wants me for his own. I wish that you were fat with a bad complexion.
I wish your eyes were crossed.
How dare you! I wish your chest were flat. You've hurt me deeply. I thought we'd be together. You and I forever. We could have been best friends. Now that devotion ends. Pack your bags. This is too much stress. I despise your tact, but I love your dress. It's over now. This bird has flown. Go find an earnest of your own. I wish that you were poor.
I wish that you were frank.
Vous êtes un pasty à l'enfant de mer. I'll tell you one thing more. I know my Ernest, honest and inventive, attractive and attentive, and he's engaged to me. It's here in print to see. My former praise is all withdrawn, and I wish that you were gone. From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar nature to make in the neighborhood.
Oh! Ernest! My own Ernest!
Gwendolen, darling.
A moment. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
Dear little Cecily, of course not. What could have put such an idea in your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman standing to your right is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack!
Oh, here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolen!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen!
Of course not! What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who just kissed you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh. Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name is certainly John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet wronged Gwendolen.
You will call me sister, won't you? There is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you, Mr. Worthing. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Earnest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother is at present.
Gwendolen, Cecily, it's very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It's the first time in my life I've been reduced to such a painful position. However, I will tell you quite frankly, I have no brother, Ernest. I have no brother at all. I've never had a brother in all my life, and I have not the smallest intention of having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
You never had a brother of any kind?
Never!
I'm afraid it's quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
That's not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go inside. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call Bunburying, I suppose.
Yes. And a perfectly wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, the only small satisfaction I have is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to, dear Algy.
Your brother is a little off colour, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear to London quite so frequently as your wicked custom was.
I only wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen. That's all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there's much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
How you can sit there, calmly eating muffins, when we are in this horrible trouble, I can't make out. You are perfectly heartless. You don't see the mess you've invented.
I'll admit it was rude, unfair and unkind. Would you believe I've repented?
No! You are perfectly childish.
So what if I'm vain and a sinner? Sir, it's most impolite and completely absurd to be asked to depart before dinner. But if you want me to go, you only need let me know.
Yes, if you'd be so kind.
I've never been so maligned. Good thing I pay you no mind.
I'll just ring for the car.
What a bastard you are!
I didn't think one could sink beneath the bottomless brink, but somehow you lowered the bar.
You can't possibly ask me to go. I've just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 6:15 under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better.
I advise you not to be christened, a dangerous thing at your age. Maybe you should have listened. We cannot both be earnest. There's only one true Earnest. I'm sure that you'll agree. The only deserving Earnest is me.
I implore you to put down that muffin.
I'm much less depressed when I'm eating.
I want you to go.
Yes, I already know. It's a phrase you seem set on repeating. Maybe we're perfectly heartless, but we look good in a turtleneck sweater. So there's no need to shout. We're dignified men. What time is dinner?
Sir, you'll be gone by then, but that's nothing to you.
I'm badly
As I
hurt.
bid you adieu.
Is there more
And in spite of
dessert?
your nerve, you will never deserve to be having your cake and
Please,
eating it
one
too.
more
And I
order.
bid you goodbye.
How can I
Or
go
perhaps you could die.
when we've just said hello? We cannot both be earnest. There's only one true Earnest. I'm sure that you'll agree. The only deserving Earnest is me.
The fact that they did not follow us into their house as anyone else would have done seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They've been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery.
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have an opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, doesn't it?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief has said.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no!
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
We both have convictions. It's high time you knew it. We do not forgive you, 'cause you really blew it. But we still adore you, though you can't undo it. Lord, we're glory, Christian Day.
Is that all? Well then, false alarm. If it's just our names, then there's been no harm. And yes,
this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you're ready to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
Honor has been completely restored. Our deceit and lies are mostly ignored.
And the end, a commonplace con got you turned on Cecily. Sees through my sincerity.
Gwendolyn ignores my good intent.
Morality's well, but sin works just as well, and decency is hard to sell. Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens.
Gwendolen, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Sit down immediately. You will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh, no! Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Poor Bunbury exploded this afternoon.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage?
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, that's what I mean. So Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. Well, now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is this young person standing inordinately close to Algernon in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air in this particular part of the country, but the number of engagements seems to me considerably above the proper average. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? Until yesterday, I had no idea there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, London. Also, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey. Oh, yes, and the Sporran in Fifeshire, Scotland.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence.
I have also in my possession, you'll be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles. Both the German and the English variety.
Ah, a life crowded with incident. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I myself am not in favour of premature experiences. Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We haven't a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune?
About £930,000. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £930,000.
Probably 3 times that next year.
She's absolutely perfect once we change her hair. She's positively faultless if one does not stare. She's absolutely splendid. I dare say my heart is warmed. She'll be absolutely perfect once she's been transformed. Pretty child, your jewellery is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it, but we can soon alter all that. She has social possibilities.
I don't care 2 pence about social possibilities, Aunt Augusta.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon, but I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss my hand.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon. To speak frankly, I am not in favour of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything.
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. But the fact is, I do not approve at all of his moral character.
Algernon? Impossible! He went to Oxford.
He will only deceive you and steal what is left of the muffins. His manners are coarse, his conduct deplored. He pretended to be my brother and seduced my only ward. Sir, you are overreacting. The muffins were most underwhelming. I want you gone. But surely you jest. I am here as your guest.
You are not my guest. Sir, I want you to go.
Or I could
Get
stay
your ducks in a row
and drive a duck
You're a
pate.
fraud and a rogue. Scandal isn't in vogue. I think Lady Bracknell should know that you're a man of conceit,
I must
a
confess,
fancy man and a cheat.
I thought you liked my shallowness.
You're disgraceful and you're
I am not.
thoughtless. A cad of no importance, a most audacious man, unworthy of holding Lady Bracknell's fan.
I am horribly offended. Well done.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
That is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. But I have not. I decline to give my consent.
How old are you, dear?
Well, I'm really only 20, but I always admit to 24 when I go to evening parties.
Well, it will not be very long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Please excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you again. But it is only fair to tell you that according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age till she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the highest birth who have remained 35 for years.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
I couldn't wait all that time, Algie. I hate waiting, even 5 minutes for anybody.
Then what's to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But, my dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will most gladly allow Mr. Moncrief to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then an unmarried life is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir. Is that not somewhat premature?
I don't think that's of much practical value to either of us now, Doctor.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I am on my way to join her.
Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She
I
approaches.
was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I have been waiting for you there.
Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism? Where is that baby? 27 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a bassinet that contained a baby of the male sex.
A bassinet.
A bassinet?
Did she just say a bassinet?
She took the baby, never came back. 27 years ago, police were called. They found the bassinet, but nothing else. But a revolting 3-volume novel of unusually offensive sentimentality. Prism, where is that baby?
I admit with utter shame, I did indeed go out that day, a day forever branded on my memory. I'm so appalled. I meant to place the manuscript inside my favorite leather bag. A handbag, an ordinary handbag, but I didn't pay attention. And in a moment of absent-mindedness, from which I will never be released, I placed the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you placed that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria! The Brighton line!
I have to go to my room for a moment. Gwendolen, will you wait for me?
If you're not too long, I'll wait here for you all my life.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
It seems to be mine. Yes! Here on the lock are my initials. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it!
You?
Yes! Mother!
Mr. Worthing, I am unmarried.
Unmarried? Well, I don't deny this is a serious blow. But why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there has been some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor favourite cousin, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother. Then I have a brother after all! I always knew I had a brother. I always said I had a brother. Algy, you young scoundrel. You'll have to treat me with more respect in the future. You've never behaved to me like a brother in your whole life. How apropos that we're related, sir. For I'm the one you've always hated, sir. And isn't it a kick we didn't know how close we were? We didn't know we had each other. That we were brothers, smashing, both so dashing. We are family, shocking and perverse. Yes, we are brothers, truly, noted duly, for better or for worse. I always knew I had a brother, a heinous, cheap, repulsive brother. I claimed we hated one another, but now I live to hear you speak 8 days a week. And despite our aristocracy, there is some truth in our hypocrisy. And though I still detest you, we must now let bygones be. 'Cause it's good luck we have each other. Because we're brothers, see sir, you and me sir. We are family, ghastly as it seems. Yes, we are brothers, right sir, such delight sir. In hindsight sir, who does more with less? Our failure was a great success.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you've become someone else?
Good point. I had quite forgotten about that. Your decision as to the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolen.
Then, the question had better be cleared up at once. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then I had been christened. That's settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
I recall that you were christened after your father.
And what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot, at the present moment, recall what the General's Christian name was, but I have no doubt he had one.
Algy, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army lists of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta?
The General was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
I have the army lists of the last 40 years right here. M. Generals. Malum, Maxbaum, Magley. What ghastly names they all have. Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief. Lieutenant 1939, Captain, Lieutenant, Colonel, General 1950. Christian names. Earnest John. I always told you, Gwendolen. My name was Earnest!
Earnest. I've never heard a
last!
Earnest, it lands so gently on the tongue, the impropriety of romance has begun.
Gwendolen, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that all his life he's been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
Gwendolen, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.
I don't care about fiction or fact. Love can never be truly exact. Boys will be boys, that's our cross to bear.
I don't care about titles or class. Love can be kind of a gas. Girls will always love what you wear.
As an age comes